Guys, Flins is one of the new characters that were announced in the latest livestream, and as the first 5-star male character we're getting since Genshin, people, me included, have really high expectations for him. In this video we'll tell you everything you need to know about his kit, about what to prioritize when leveling him up, about his best builds, his best teams, and his constellations, so you can prepare for everything before he comes out. So, Flins is one of the first characters of the Not Cry era, and as such, one could expect him to bring a lot of innovations in terms of gameplay. However, the more I looked at him during beta, the more it seemed to me that this character doesn't really bring much of anything new to the table, and rather, it takes a lot of elements from electro carries of the past. His effectiveness entirely relies on a special stance he can activate through his Elemental skill, which has a duration of 10 seconds and a cooldown of 16 seconds. This window kind of reminds me of Chlorend, who has a shorter uptime duration of 7 seconds, but the same cooldown of 16 seconds. While this special stance is active, all of his auto attacks will deal electro damage with multipliers that are all in the Elemental skill, so you'll have to level up the skill and not the auto attack talent to increase their damage. Either way, during this special stance, he gets access to another special skill that he can use with a cooldown of 6 seconds. Upon using it, he'll modify the functioning of his elemental burst. In fact, while normally his burst is an ability that consumes 80 energy to deal some damage, after using the special skill, you can use a special version of the burst that only costs 30 energy to use and deals a similar amount of damage. And also it has a much worse animation sadly, but what can you do? In this regard, Flins is pretty similar to Varesa, who can use a 30 cost burst after using a plunge attack in a Fury state. The 30 cost burst damage is entirely of Lunar Charge type, and as a reminder, that means that its effective multipliers are basically tripled compared to the stated amount, and that it ignores defense, which is very important. Now, if you're sad that the much better looking burst is not that strong, the good news is that there is still a way to integrate it into Flint's rotations, but I'll talk about this later. Overall, Flint has a wide variety of attacks, which is nice, but in reality his damage distribution is highly skewed towards a specific attack of his, which is the burst. While it's still important for him to use all the attacks he can between the skill and burst usages, what really matters is that he can capitalize on the elemental bursts. This is partially due to the fact that pretty much all of his passives will only increase his reaction damage, so the burst damage and the normal lunar charge triggers. For this reason, in my opinion, Flins will play in a similar way to Navia, as in for Flins his bursts are basically what the elemental skills are for Navia. While Navia's normal attacks and burst damage is pretty important, what really matters the most for her is to use the skills right, and the same will go for Flins and his bursts. This is nice, because apparently Flins doesn't have high interruption resistance values, similar to Cyno as of right now, and so his combos can get interrupted a lot. Even if that happens, he won't lose a lot of rotation damage. However, his normal attacks are still important, because that's how he generates particles. Basically, through his normals, he can generate a particle every 2 seconds, and so you want to make sure that you can at least maximize that. Based on all of the information I just explained, this is my priority list when it comes to upgrading your Flins. First should come unlocking all of his Ascension levels and increasing the talent level of his burst, so his main damage ability. Increasing his level as much as possible also helps, because the normal lunar charge reaction damage will be bigger the higher the level of your character. Then you should increase his skill talent a little bit, since the attacks that come with it will still deal a noticeable amount of damage, and that's all you really need to worry about. Now let's take a look at what his best teams are, but first let me remind you that if you enjoy my content but you haven't subbed yet, please consider doing so because it really makes me notice your support. So, when it comes to Flins, there is only really one specific teammate that could be considered a staple, and that's obviously Inefa. The main reason is simple, there is no sub DPS for electrocharge teams that deals even half the damage Inefa deals. Honestly, while Flint's DPS is absolutely considerable, Inefa's damage output on his teams is big enough that one could argue Flint is not a hyper carry in those cases, but just a carry. Secondarily, Inefa is the only support in the game that can provide base damage boost for the lunar charge reaction for the whole team, which means she increases Flint's damage considerably. Note that Flint also has the same passive, and so that means that the two of them will be helping each other. Last but not least, she provides a shield, the perfect type of sustain for Flint because its interruption resistance is not great. While this is not quite a Escoffier's Kirk situation, it's not that far off, and it's bad enough that you'll have to think twice on pulling Flins if you don't also have Inefa. Luckily, on the remaining slots of the team, Flins is not nearly as restrictive. For the Hydro slot, this is more because there is no real great option here. In fact, while your first thought might be that Furina or Yelan fit exceptionally well here, they actually don't, because damage bonus support doesn't increase lunar charge damage because it's a transformative reaction, and so their elemental bursts are useless enough in that sense that, in Furina's case, it's not even worth using it on Flint's teams. I know it's pretty competitive in the slot as well, but at Constellation 0 she doesn't really provide much. Her value is increased by her constellations, which can make her increase reaction damage for the team. Still, she's an important character for Flins regardless, because she's from Nodcry, and as you might know, having two Nodcry characters on the teams comes with a set of benefits. Primarily, it activates an elemental resonance that increases lunar reaction damage for the whole team. Note that while you need two Nodcry characters to enable this, the buff will be dependent on characters on the team that are not from Nodcry, and so for its purpose, what's optimal is to have just two Nodcry characters on the team and no more. Secondarily, having two enables some characters' abilities. In Flint's case, the one that increases his own lunar reaction damage. Last but not least, it maximizes the effects of Nodcry sets, almost doubling their performance. Basically, if you don't have Ineffa, Aino will be a crucial partner for Flins. For the main support slot in traditional teams, since Flins doesn't like damage bonus, a character like Kazuha is not optimal. Somebody like Shilunan can work, but she'll function better with Instructor set, which gives elemental mastery, as opposed to Cinder City, which gives damage bonus. The perfect choice here is Sucrose, with a Kazuha counterpart that gives elemental mastery support instead of damage bonus, and on top of that can supply the team with attack support through weapons like Thrilling Tales and Event Star. Among his best themes, what performs the best are the compositions with either Aino or Furina. That's because Flins can run on pretty short 16 seconds long rotations, since that's the cooldown of his elemental skill, and both Aino and Furina can fit well in those time constraints. Specifically, since Furina's elemental skill has a 30 seconds duration, you only need to use it once every 2 rotations. Aino can compete with her if she's at Constellation 6, otherwise she's a bit worse. Beyond that, anything goes. Yelan, Candace, Kokomi with sacrificial fragments, literally anything goes because nothing is that great. Note that the longer a supportive character stretches her rotation, the lower the DPS becomes compared to the best options, because typically these characters can't contribute highly enough to make up for that deficiency. Lastly, a character like Llama replacing a character like Sucrose works pretty well. While the Electro characters lose something in terms of raw damage, they make a lot of it back in Hyper Bloom damage, and Llama herself is a much better damage dealer than Sucrose. Anyway, as I was saying earlier, if you don't have Ineffa, the damage drop-off is considerable. Not even for Flint's damage itself, because while Ineffa supports him, it's not that much. But it's just about losing such a valuable sub-DPS that can also provide a shield. Options like Ororon, Fischl are all pretty good in a vacuum, but they simply cannot replicate the impact Ineffa has on the team. Basically, if you don't have Ineffa, Aino will be a crucial partner for Flins. Without Ineffa, a Constellation 0 without a 5-star weapon is probably below any DPS from Natlan. Builds-wise, I've already gone in depth on how you should build up your Flins in a dedicated video, and little has changed since then, so here is just a summary. In terms of artifact stats, offensively Flins only cares about attack, elemental mastery, and crit. Excluding crit, attack is typically always the most important stat by a significant margin, excluding when you're running him with Llama Hyper Bloom, in which case elemental mastery is about the same value. Of course, damage bonus goblet is a no for him. Energy wise, in most cases he'll use just 60 energy a rotation, which is not a lot, so his requirements are pretty low. 130 will be a good range regardless of the team, but it's very possible he'll be able to do well with even less. Artifacts wise, his signature set is the new Nodcry artifact, which gives crit rate, lunar damage bonus, and elemental mastery, but it's only really good if you have two Nodcry characters on the team. The only real alternative, however, is Marachusei if you have Furina on the composition. Gilded Dreams is worse than the set even if you don't fulfill the Nodcry requirement, and naturally mixes of two-piece options are just worse. Weapons-wise, his signature is really good, because it gives him pretty much all the stats that he needs and an energy refund to make him extra comfy to play. It's It's much better than any other option, with the closest one being Scarlet Sands, which is a huge attack and crit stat stick. Other 5-star options like Homa, Primordial Jade Wing Spear are also pretty good. Among 4-star options, Deathmatch, Fjords, and the new free-to-play craftable have similar value. I want to mention that there is a combo for Flins that will make him spend more energy than normal, specifically one where he adds his normal burst at the start of the combo after he uses his Elemental skill. This cumulates to 140 energy spent in a single rotation. All credits to Zajev for this because he came up with the idea. Without going too in detail on specifics, of course this is not something you can expect to do every rotation because 140 energy is a lot, but with the right weapon you might be able to do it every 2 or 3 rotations without investing too much into energy stats for artifacts. Specifically, weapons that have energy related effects like Engulfing Lightning and Favonius benefit massively from this type of combo and become quite competitive. Meanwhile, for a weapon like his signature that has energy related effects but not to the same degree, this combo shouldn't be an advantage over normal combos in a traditional sense, considering that to make it work you'd have to run an energy recharge stance on Flins. Basically, in my opinion, this combo is good if you want to make energy recharge options more valuable on him. As for his constellations, his early ones are really good. The Constellation one decreases his special skill cooldown by 2 seconds, meaning he can use it 3 times a rotation, which means he can also use 3 mini bursts for 90 energy spent a rotation. To counterbalance the additional energy he has to spend, he gets a significant energy refund from this constellation as well, which pretty much makes up for the extra expense. His Constellation 2 and 3 are also pretty good, although they're more simple damage increases. The Constellation 2 is even a good team damage increase because part of it reduces electro resistance on opponents, which means it will also impact potent electro sub DPS like in Effa. Overall, Flins is a pretty strong character and he has excellent early investment upside. In general, if you list heavy in Effa, you'll be able to get very good results from him in any mode, and if you plan to get his signature constellations, then it will probably be insane for at least a year. Meanwhile, if you don't have in Effa and you don't plan to invest too much on him, then he is definitely a character you can skip unless you really like him. And with this, I'm done for today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and go check the 6.0 poll guide I made yesterday. Bye bye.